Welcome to the Phaeton Football Draftkings Cash Game Picks for Week 6. Last week was an exciting week. I had a lot of fun playing DFS, and I'm looking again forward to this week. It should be a much different week. We've got some value at running back, which we really didn't have much last week, and we don't have a lot of value at wide receiver, which there was a lot of different ways you could try to go last week. So, without further ado, let's dive in and start at quarterback. Quarterback this week, with some of the value in the running back position, we could definitely look to pay up. At the top, we have Drew Brees. Of the elite quarterbacks, he has a great matchup with being at home against Detroit. Detroit has an okay defense. They certainly haven't been great, and Drew Brees at home's averaged 30.2 fantasy points a game, while only 22 on the road. So you definitely want to look to play Drew Brees when he's at home. Deshaun Watson's come out of the gate firing early on in his career. He's been running and passing, and he's had some good matchups. And again, this is a good matchup this week against Cleveland. The Houston Texans have an implied total of 28 points based on the Vegas betting odds, so it seems safe to think that Deshaun Watson will certainly be involved in scoring some of those points. So based on that, I think he's got a pretty safe floor and a pretty high ceiling. So a good spot for Deshaun. Each week we seem to be talking about Carson Palmer, but he's averaging over 300 yards a game over his past 4 games. Now, admittedly, the touchdowns haven't been there, and I think really that's what's kept his price down and prevented him from having some really high-scoring days. But that said, 300 yards plus a touchdown gets you 19 points, so that's nothing to sneeze at. Or it gets you 20 points, sorry. So that's nothing to sneeze at, and I think Carson Palmer's a pretty safe bet against Tampa Bay's defense, who's been the third worst at giving up passing yards. So I think that this is kind of a match made in heaven for Carson Palmer. And I really doubt AP coming to town is going to really change Arizona's air raid game plans. And Case Keenum has looked competent as the quarterback for Minnesota. He's got great weapons around him in Diggs and Thielen, and the Green Bay defense has had a way of making other teams' QBs look confident. Game script probably indicates that Minnesota will have to throw, seeing as Green Bay is favored in this game. Moving on to running backs. You can definitely some cheaper running backs that are pretty viable and figure to get quite a bit of volume. We've got Kareem Hunt at the top. Pittsburgh's really struggled. He's at home. I think there's a really good chance that Kareem Hunt will be fed the rock. We're also expecting that Travis Kelce might not play because of his concussion, so that would just mean more catches out of the backfield for Kareem Hunt, and I think the game plan would definitely center around Mr. Hunt. Devonta Freeman at home always does well. Against Miami, there's a good chance Atlanta will have a big lead, and if that's the case, they're going to run out the clock, just handing Freeman the ball. So great spot for Devonta. I like him in cash games and GPPs this week. Lamar Miller seems to have been getting most of the workload against Cleveland, who's a really bad team. So I think Lamar Miller could see a lot of touches, and has a good chance of scoring a touchdown. Getting down to the real cheap options here, Elijah McGuire should get most of the workload. Bilal Powell has an injury, and even if he does play, we don't expect him to take a lot of work away from Elijah. New England has struggled containing pass-catching running backs, just due to horrible linebacker play, and so Elijah McGuire figures to be in a good spot. Finally, New Orleans has committed to Mark Ingram. With AP traded out of town, Mark Ingram should see a few more touches. He was already the favorite, in that backfield. He was getting over 50% of the snaps. Finally, we've got Jerick McKinnon. We all saw what he was able to do last week, putting up 26.6 fantasy points on the Monday night game. The fantasy community has been waiting for Jerick McKinnon to be set free. You can see from the measurables in the 40-yard dash, speed score, burst score, agility score, bench press, he is a freak. There are not too many guys that are 209 pounds and can bench press 225 pounds 32 times and go out and run a 4.40. So, definitely he's got the athletic tools, and we saw that on display on the Monday night game where he was trucking people and moving around them. So I'm excited to play him. I think against Green Bay, I think there's a really good chance we see a lot of Jerick McKinnon. At wide receiver, since there are some options to save money both at quarterback and at running back, I think it makes sense to pay up. There's not a lot of great value wide receivers that we can reasonably expect to get a lot of targets. So I really like spending up at wide receiver this week. You can't go wrong with Antonio Brown. I mean, he's just the GOAT. At KC with the matchup with Marcus Peters, is that really something to worry about? I don't know. I don't think so. Kansas City tends to play man defense, and I'll take Antonio Brown one-on-one with anyone. We all saw what he did to Jacksonville last week, so I think he's a favorite to do it again. DeAndre Hopkins has seen 12 targets each of the last 2 weeks. Deshaun Watson definitely likes to throw the ball his way, and Cleveland's really struggled containing number one receivers. I definitely think he's a lock. Talked about Drew Brees in the quarterback section. Why not? Drew Brees is number one receiver at home in a good matchup. I really like Michael Thomas. He's really priced, just given how good at football he is. This year he's the number 9 receiver, and he's about the 9th priced receiver on this slate. So I think he's definitely set up for success here. Larry Fitzgerald, again, same kind of logic as Carson Palmer. Tampa Bay's given up a ton of yards. Larry Fitzgerald gets targets every week. I think he'd be a good choice here in cash games. In tournaments, I'd definitely look at J.J. Nelson and John Brown. I think Carson Palmer will definitely be swinging it to those guys. Michael Crabtree, I think he's really just too cheap, especially if Carr plays. We were spending over almost $7,000 for him only a few weeks ago. So I think the price is a little bit overcorrected, even against a somewhat tough matchup in the Chargers. The only really cheap option that I like is Taylor Gabriel. We've got Sanu trending to not playing. If he doesn't play, I think Taylor Gabriel might be a really good play. Julio Jones has been hurting and hobbling around, and in a game like this where they're a big favorite, I really think they're gonna not feature Jones too heavily if they don't have to, focusing more on Freeman, and then maybe opening up some targets for Taylor Gabriel. Tight end is a dumpster fire. You don't want to overspend in salary here. A couple of options that I like is Cameron Brake. He's a great player and an okay matchup, and he's a bit underpriced. Kerry Kittle broke out in a big way after doing nothing for the first few weeks, but he was on the field quite a bit, and he was running a lot of routes. A few sharp players picked up on that. We saw him in the Million Maker lineup. I think Washington tends to funnel targets to the tight end because they have the good corners. With Josh Norman chasing around Pierre Garçon, I think Kerry Kittles has a good chance of picking up a good number of catches. My favorite play for the week is Zach Miller. He has an 18% market share, and rookie QBs tend to like their tight ends, so I suspect Mitch Trubisky might be looking up a little bit. Zach's a good cheap option with a good chance of getting a reasonable number of targets. That's what we like in our tight ends, so I'm thinking I'm going to fire him up this week. Defense. Houston is one of the more expensive on the plate defenses on the slate, but they are playing a second-year, fifth-round QB, starting his first game for the Cleveland Browns. For any defense, this would be a great spot for a good defense. Even though they did lose J.J. Watt last week, Houston figures to be in for a big day against this essentially rookie QB. Similar logic for Baltimore. Mitch Trubisky, I kind of feel for him. He got Minnesota on Monday, then he's got to go play in Baltimore on the road. Trubisky has a bright future, but this is just a tough spot for a rookie QB. I think Baltimore is definitely a favorite to get a few stacks and possibly some interceptions. Pittsburgh, with the exception of Antonio Brown, has really struggled. Big Ben had five interceptions last week. So after the game, he was basically, it might have been tongue-in-cheek, but Big Ben was basically admitting that he was done. So, and he certainly has looked that way this year. Last year, he wasn't practicing much, so it seems like the end is probably near. I think the Kansas City defense has a pretty good shot at beating up Pittsburgh fairly badly. Definitely be careful, though. If you do play Antonio Brown, you probably don't want to put Kansas City in your lineup. Thank you very much for watching the Fate and Football picks for Week 6. If you like this video, please subscribe, and we'll be looking to do a video every week. Thanks. Bye.